Made it clear that he does not want Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, and no options to prevent such a thing are off the table. That from the Defense Secretary Leon Panetta.
Are they trying to develop a nuclear weapon? No.
The warning comes just as Iran reportedly announced it will extend a visit by United Nations nuclear inspectors. As you probably know, much of the world suspects Iran is attempting to build a nuclear weapon. The Iranian government is denying it. A recent UN report seems to suggest that Iran has been carrying out a number of nuclear-related weapons experiments. And last night on CBS's 60 Minutes, Secretary Panetta revealed how close Iran could be to building a bomb.
The consensus is that if they decided to do it, it would probably take them about a year to be able to produce a bomb, and then possibly another 1 to 2 years in order to put it on a deliverable vehicle of some sort in order to deliver that weapon.
And the hope is that the United Nations weapons inspectors may be able to pick up some more clues. The Fox Sports chief correspondent Jonathan Hunt is with us. Secretary Panetta made it pretty clear Iran is one of his chief concerns right now.
Yeah, and a growing concern, Shep, because Iran continues to trumpet every single advance it makes in the development of the sort of missiles that could deliver a nuclear weapon, while at the same time insisting its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes only. So yes, according to the Defense Secretary, they don't trust the Iranians, and stopping them from getting a nuclear weapon is at the very top of his to-do list. Listen.
The United States, and the President's made this clear, does not want Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. That's a red line for us, and it's a red line, obviously, for the Israelis. So we share a common goal here. If we have to do it, we will do it.
What is it?
If they proceed, and we get intelligence that they're proceeding with developing a nuclear weapon, then we will take whatever steps are necessary to stop them.
A clear indication that, as the Defense Secretary said, no options are off the table at this point, Shep.
For now, what we're looking at is a lot of international pressure.
Yeah, the U.S. is putting pressure on Iran's oil industry through its banks. The European Union recently decided to ban the import of Iranian oil. But India announced today that, along with China, it will continue to buy Iranian oil. So Jay Carney, the White House spokesman, was asked at the White House today how long the administration is willing to give it to see if this sort of economic pressure works. Here's his answer.
It's an estimate based on the administration's view about the development of the process in Iran, but it doesn't change our strategy.
But our strategy is only as important, perhaps, as Israel's strategy, and we've just heard from the Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, who says he believes Iran is playing for time. And as he arrived back in Israel from Switzerland, Shep, he said, quote, "Time is urgently running out."
Jonathan, thank you. Let's bring in Mike Barrett now. He's a former intelligence officer for the Office of the Secretary of Defense. He's also a former director of strategy for the White House Homeland Security Council and is now the CEO of the security consulting firm Diligent Innovations. Mike, good to see you. Thank you.
Sure thing, Shep.
I mean, forgive me for not being able to forget, but 11 years ago we heard this same thing about Iraq, and, well, you know.
Well, we did, and that's really the, the crux of the issue here is that you don't really know anything for certain. So you heard Secretary Panetta say maybe a year, but then are there things that could accelerate that in terms of the development of the weapon itself? Then we said maybe a year, maybe 2 more years to actually develop the warhead delivery mechanisms. But of course, there's other ways to deliver a nuclear weapon as opposed to how we, the U.S., might do it. So we would put it on a missile, we would, use intercontinental ballistic missiles, launch it from submarines, things like that. Much less complicated to put it in the back of a truck and drive it across the state border. So there's a lot of ambiguities and uncertainties about what Iran might do with it. And really, at the end of the day, the issue here is that Iran can say a lot of things and threaten a lot of things and basically have a tremendous amount of regional power just by pure virtue of having the weapon. So that's the issue here.
Well, they can do the same thing as Saddam Hussein proved just by pretending to have the program. I mean, it was Saddam Hussein who didn't want to, we now know, didn't want to give up the fact that he didn't have anything and let his neighbors realize that he was weak in that way, and instead let us invade and start a 10-year war with him.
You're exactly right. And so one of the things that we saw was that actually when we went in '91, turned out that Saddam's weapons of mass destruction program was much further advanced than we thought it was, including in particular the nuclear program. He actually had made a lot more progress than we thought. And so then for the 10 years, 11 years of sanctions, we had sort of a cat and mouse game, lots of lying, put in inspectors, take inspectors out, you know, trying to fracture the coalition. Everyone's patience wear thin. You continue to go back to the UN Security Council again and again. Eventually, we became convinced, based on the intelligence available, that he did in fact have the weapons, and then he didn't. And I would tell you one other quick point that, you know, Libya, it turned out when we went into Iraq the second time in 2003, Libya turned over their weapons program, which helped us take down the AQ Khan network, which was basically a black market for nuclear weapons. So there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of movement out there in the world when it comes to nuclear weapons. And, of course, you marry that with terrorism and some of the other concerns we have today. I mean, it is an unstable situation.
Mike Barrett, live with us from Washington. Mike, thanks very much.
Netta now says that the massive 30,000-pound bunker buster may not be strong enough to reach Iran's nuclear labs buried deep underground. That's a problem he says the Pentagon is working to fix. The Defense Department has already spent over $300 million to develop the bomb, and so far only 20 have been made. Now they're asking for $82 million more to make the bunker buster, quote, more effective. The Air Force is also working to retrofit some B-2 stealth bombers to carry the bomb just in case it's ever needed.
To watch that. It feels like yesterday when you see that video every time, even almost 10 years later as we watch that. And today, there's still new evidence coming to light. And this evidence is that Iran may have known about the September 11th attacks in advance, may in fact have even been involved in helping to plan them.
The inspection team for the International Atomic Energy Agency, seen here leaving Vienna, has now arrived in Tehran to do their work. The IAEA issued a report in November citing evidence that Iran does have nuclear ambitions. The organization says this trip will help clarify matters.
I mean, forgive me for not being able to forget, but 11 years ago we heard this same thing about Iraq. And, well, you know.
We should have bombed somebody in Iran, then we'd bring them to the table, just like President Nixon did to the Vietnamese.
Well, a militia group linked to terror being backed by Iran and setting up camp on America's doorstep.
Al-Qaeda in Iran. These people are out to kill us.
People don't understand the danger that this country poses to the world.
10 kilotons in a refrigerator in a cargo container could kill 1 million people.
It is too late to stop Iran's nuclear program.
They're at war now.
The attacks are connected to al-Qaeda, but is Iran pushing the terror buttons?
Al-Qaeda is in Baghdad.
American officials say Tehran is forging ties with al-Qaeda.
There were connections and discussions between senior Iraqi leaders and senior al-Qaeda members.
Iran is playing together with al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda operatives in Iran training in aircraft to fly into either buildings in a 9/11 style attack.
Iran is the central banker of international terrorism, and I hope it's not going to take another 9/11 to wake us up.
We're fighting a forward strategy to prevent another 9/11 from happening over here.
We don't want to have another 9/11.
9/11 with weapons of mass destruction.
Iran continuing to defy the UN by refusing to answer questions about its nuclear program.
Saddam Hussein has no intention of cooperating with the United Nations.
Iranians are moving forward with their nuclear program quicker than expected.
Saddam's illegal weapons program is going strong right under the inspectors' noses.
Iran is actively involved in killing U.S. soldiers and civilians.
You have the proof. It's fairly unequivocal here.
Irrefutable evidence that Saddam continues to hide weapons of mass destruction.
We ultimately are headed towards a military confrontation.
We have the world's greatest military, and we'll use it.
We've got to use our force, and to me that would include taking military action.
War now seems all but inevitable.
The very real possibility of war.
With 2 carrier strike groups in the Gulf, we're sending clear messages to friends and adversaries alike.
This network is helping fight the media war, and the American people have been dumbed down by the secular left.
My station was intimidated by the administration and its foot soldiers at Fox News.
We're going to find out massive evidence of weapons of mass destruction, massive evidence of weapons of mass destruction.
All those things that you predict are going to come true, and a lot of people that have been laying out the case against us are going to be very embarrassed.
Intelligence gathered by this and other governments leaves no doubt that the Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised.
Iraq provided training in these weapons to al-Qaeda.
Listen, these folks are determined. These are killers. They chop people's heads off. They're getting money from around the world. They're getting recruits.
It turned out, as we discovered later, that a lot of the sourcing that had been attested to by the intelligence community was wrong. I deeply regret that the information I presented, which was multi-source, was wrong.
We thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't. Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
18 people were killed in Iraq.
Nope, no weapons over there.
As many as 4 people are dead and 15 wounded after a car bomb exploded on Tuesday.
Maybe under here.
Very embarrassed.
In light of the fact that we did not find the weapons of mass destruction, would you do the same thing all over again? Would you do the same thing all over again?
We rested our case on the existence of weapons of mass destruction. I think without that weapons of mass destruction case, the justification would not have been there.
It has nothing to do with national security. Matter of fact, our national security is more jeopardized by permitting this to happen because we're liable to start a war. We're liable to have our military men killed. We're liable to have more attacks on us by terrorists.
I do not think it's effective. I think it drums up more anti-American hostility. I see no threat to our national security. There's no convincing evidence that Iraq is capable of threatening the security of this country. Very little reason, if any, to pursue a war.
The Iranians have repeatedly said they want to wipe Israel off the map.
Take military action to keep Iran from having a nuclear weapon.
You have to take whatever steps are necessary to break its capacity to have a nuclear weapon.
The Iranians are the existential threat to the state of Israel.
Without a shadow of a doubt,
leaves no doubt,
Iran will take a nuclear weapon. They will use it to wipe our ally Israel off the face of the map.
It's another Iraq coming. There's war propaganda going on. To me, the greatest danger is that we will have a president that will overreact.
Washington's enemy is an enemy that doesn't exist.
This wild goal to have another war in the name of defense is the dangerous thing.
But there is nothing that indicates that Iran is really building a bomb.
They produced information that led you to believe that, but they have no evidence.
We might not be able to trust the IAEA. They say that the source is actually a single source.
The sourcing was wrong.
It will not tell us where that source is coming from at all. The provenance of that source has not been established.
Just like we did in Iraq, build up the war propaganda. There was no al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Okay.
It's time we quit this.